Hello everybody. It is September 21st, 2025 here in the United States of America. And in today's video, I want to talk about the future of the American Democratic Party in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder and how they could even proceed forward from this in a way that would allow them to appeal again to the general public and allow them to win another national election. Now, as everybody knows, I'm sure by now, Charlie Kirk, a prominent political commentator and conservative activist, was murdered on a college campus in Utah, shot and killed in front of his wife and his children for debating people on the far left over social issues like DEI, gender ideology, sexuality, sometimes geopolitics, things like affirmative action. Charlie Kirk generally held the milquetoast conservative stance on all of those issues, and he, it would appear at this point, was murdered publicly for holding those issues and speaking, or holding those beliefs on those issues and speaking publicly and debating people about them. He was seen as a political threat and lost his life because of it. Now, in the wake of all that, you've had many prominent Democratic politicians or members of the Democratic Party or people that promote the ideals of the Democratic establishment, such as Jimmy Kimmel, come out and make some very callous remarks in regards to Charlie Kirk. Some people have said he more or less deserved what he got. The world's a better place without him. His ideas should be relegated to the dustbin of history. You had one representative in my home state of Ohio who actually I think he said the world was a better place, that Charlie Kirk was killed, and then he was forced to resign from his position as a city councilman because of what he said. And the alarming thing now is you have quite a few members of the Democratic Party establishment essentially saying that the murder of Charlie Kirk was acceptable, was fine, was okay, was morally righteous because he held the same milquetoast conservative views that 50% or more of the country holds. Now, that's alarming and frightening. Now, if you're a strategist in the Democratic Party and you're not a far-left political activist, this is horrifying. Now, this is the direct result of the Democratic Party courting the political activist class that came up through the colleges, young left-wing political activists that were seen to be the future of the party and the future of the country. And this is why leaders of the Democratic Party, being the opportunists and politicians and cynics that they are, threw their hats in with these people. They tried to bring them in the party, promote them as the future of the party, while still trying to steer them in the direction that the political direction that the party would find acceptable. Now, I think it has largely failed in that. Now you have one of the most famous people within the Democratic Party, AOC, saying that Charlie's views should be relegated to the dustbin of history. Funny enough, the Democrats actually just lost an election largely because they hold contrary views to most of the country on things like gender ideology, sexuality, social issues, policing, and whatnot. Now, Charlie held the milquetoast conservative view on all of those things, and it seems like during the last presidential election, much of the country voted in favor of Charlie's stances on those issues as opposed to, say, the stances that AOC held. Now, here's the issue for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party cannot rely on the activist vote to win elections, but they have replaced their base, the American working class, blue-collar American workers, union members, with this revolutionary activist base because they hedge their bets that this would be the future of the country, but they'd be able to bring them into the party, control them, give them enough to keep them as their political base while still moving forward with the foreign policy that they wanted, the social policies that they wanted, and maintaining the status quo underneath the disguise of being progressives. Like, neoliberals are not true progressives in any way, shape, or form. I would just ask Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian or somebody. Oh gosh, what's that other? He left the Young Turks. Jimmy Dore. or people like Jimmy Dore. Ask them what they actually think of the neo-libs, and you'll get the progressive response to people like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and that establishment, those establishment politicians. So I think the problem the Democratic Party seems to be facing is now it has people like AOC openly saying that the views of more than half the country should be relegated to the dustbin of history, and just doubling down on every single thing they're saying, not realize Charlie Kirk was a beloved figure in the United States, a very beloved figure, to the point where his memorial just sold out a football stadium to the seat. Hundreds of thousands of people, over 300,000 people showed up to this memorial. That's astounding. That really is. This outpouring of love and support from across the country in response to him being murdered should make the Democratic Party really rethink their strategy. But even if they wanted to, I don't think they can, because of the mistake they made in regards to abandoning the average American blue-collar worker. Because what they did, they took on the social platform of these young college activists, which began to really alienate much of the American public. They aren't interested in things like gender ideology. They're not interested in things like different kinds of sexuality, of legislating the interests of the fringe, so to speak, the fringes of American society, of legislating specifically in their favor. They want peace, they want security, they want a society that doesn't feel alien to them. They want to be able to send their kids out to school and not have their kids come back and be activists who hate their own parents and wish them dead. That are going to no longer provide them with grandchildren or a normal family structure. They don't want that. They're rejecting that across the board. Most of American society seems to be rejecting that across the board. They want a return to normalcy. And these activists are just doubling down again and again and again and again on social views that are being widely rejected by the country. And this is getting to the point now where, say, an issue like Palestine comes up. The Democratic Party is still, because it's the American establishment, is still firmly entrenched on the side of Israel in matters of geopolitics and foreign policy. Well, now, again, they're having a problem because their base doesn't feel the same way. Their base is very anti-colonial. They're on the side of the Palestinians because they view the Israelis as colonial oppressors, and the oppressed must be freed. Leela, you have a scratching post. Stop tearing the couch apart. Sorry. Where was I? The issue of Palestine, for example. And now they have their base openly in revolt against the policies of the Democratic establishment that's firmly on the side of Israel. And they're trying to do as much as they can to feed them enough in regards to the other policy positions that they have to keep them on their side, but they're facing increased opposition where the next Democratic president would almost have to take an anti-Israel stance, but they know they can't politically swing that. Not to their donors and not to the MIC in the United States, and not to the intelligence communities and the foreign policy establishment. They can't do it. And again, this base that they have has become a liability, where they're just going to continue to double down on their, saying that the murder of Charlie Kirk was perfectly acceptable political discourse when half the country has the same views. What does that say? What does that imply? What does that say about the future of the country when you have its leaders of one of its political establishments implying that it's perfectly fine to respond to somebody who has these views with killing them in front of their wife and children? We can't continue with that kind of instability, and I think a lot of people are seeing that now, and a lot of people in the Democratic Party, especially ones that aren't really activists, that are in there because they think that's the party that protects the little guy, that protects Americans from corporate greed. Well, the issue with that is you have a rising segment of the populist right that is in agreement on those things, that doesn't want corporations to run the country, that is against exploitation of workers, that is anti-war. And I think something that's probably alarming the Democratic establishment is now there's this alternative, this populist alternative rising up through the Republican Party that can pull away a lot of those voters, that will probably accept the more conservative social positions of the Republican Party in favor of stability, in favor of having that real option again, of voting against corporate power. There's even some members of MAGA that are in favor of government-funded health insurance or universal health care. That's something that's becoming increasingly popular on the right as well. So again, that has to alarm them now that they have a real alternative. They can lose the remaining voters to, well, now what do they do with this activist class that they have? It's kind of hard to say. I think if this continues, I think if more political violence against conservative happens, and it's proven for a fact that it's coming from these activists, that they're now resorting to open political violence and murder of people for simply speaking their minds, then the future of the Democratic Party in the United States is lost. The average American citizen will just view them as a party of chaos and murder. And I think Democratic strategists in the upper echelons of the party are perfectly aware of this, and I think they are going to make a concerted effort. If they are going to run Gavin Newsom in 2028, they are going to make a conservative effort to try to shift back from the middle, to get away from activist politics, to pretend like they never really had anything to do with them, to slowly steer the ship back towards the center, to try to become the Democratic Party of 100 years ago once again. But I'm not sure if they'd be able to pull it off, and I'm not sure this new base that they have is going to let them do it. So that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. I think that the party, unless they really try to right the ship, unless they really move back towards center-left policies and abandon the activists that kind of come back to things that most Americans could generally agree on. I think one of the things that really destroyed the Democratic Party the most was just doubling down on some of these social issues. I like supporting abortion up till it's basically open infanticide, where even the most liberal person looks at it and says, "My God, this is horrifying. That's a living baby. How could you do that?" Now, me as an Orthodox Christian, obviously you can probably guess my stance on abortion, but even somebody who's generally liberal on the subject, when they hear things like abortion up till right before birth, it's not something they're going to support. Yet some of these activists are like, yeah, it's perfectly fine, because they're nihilists. They don't view human life as having really any value unless you believe in certain political agendas. If you're not serving the machine, then you're not serving anything at all, and you shouldn't even be here. But anyways, that's really all I wanted to talk about in this video. I'll be back this Tuesday with another video. I'm not sure what subject it'll be on yet. I want to do a bit more show prep. I do a lot of these videos on the fly, and I've gone back and watched a few of them, and I think I could do a better job at staying on subject, not repeating myself, giving myself a general script to follow. If anybody out there has any feedback on presentation here, things I could do a little bit better, I really would appreciate it. I would like to grow this channel. I really enjoy doing commentary like this. It's fun. It's what I went to school for. My day job doesn't really allow for me to do this. I make good money, but it's not what I went to school for, and I would like to actually be able to do this more and more, and it'd be something that I could really I wouldn't say make a career out of, so to speak, but something I could really feel like is utilizing my knowledge base and my degree and what I went to school for, and actually doing something with it. It'd be fantastic. But anyways, I'll see everybody Tuesday, and have a good one.